full partnership by the time they were 29 or 30. And all the law firms, all the women bailed out, all of them. The law firms couldn't keep them. And I was really, and I talked to the women a lot about this because I was very interested in it, because I knew the law firms were bending themselves over backwards and tying themselves into knots trying to retain these women, because why wouldn't they? Just being greedy capitalists is enough. They don't want to lose their high-performing women because they're performing at the highest level, and they couldn't keep them. The women wanted to have.
They're there because they are they're quota hires is what they are. It's not so much about performance. It's not. I mean, maybe they're great. Who knows, right? It's not about performance. It's about the fact that those companies, and particularly in California, by the way, those companies have prerequisites placed on them so that they can do business in the states that they're in, right? Whether it's the attorneys or whatever the hell you want to call it. They're there because they are quota hires. They have to fund. It's not, I mean, maybe they're good, as I said, but let's cut the bullshit here.
Women. And I suppose the most single most convincing evidence of that, I worked with high-end lawyers in Toronto, high achieving from like junior high all the way through high school, university, law school, onto the top firms, rocketing up through the ranks, full partnership by the time they were 29 or 30. Partnership, but that's sort of an apogee, right? You hit partnership in a senior law firm, it's like you're at the top of your profession. Well, then what? Well, so then they looked around and they thought, here I am with all these like hyper competitive men, perfectly willing to work 80 hours a week nonstop to stay at the top. What the hell are they doing? Because that's the real question. What is it that characterizes this small percentage of hyper competitive men? It's not. You can assume that that's how everyone should be, but first of all, that isn't how everyone is. Or you can flip that and say, well, there's only a small minority of human beings that are willing to do this, to work flat out 8 hours a week. I mean, they're certainly being paid for it. Let's make no mistake about that. But well, what about the rest of life? Well, that's what the women asked. Why am I doing this? And that's a great question. Well, for men, there's a different answer than for women. It's a really different answer. And it isn't like the men are exactly thinking this through. It's more like this is an integral part of male motivation. The more successful you are as a man, the more women like you.
But the problem that you have now is that as women are getting better educated, with more employment, more status, more prestige, they compete themselves out of their ability to find an attractive mate. Right. As women raise up through the dominance hierarchy. And this is
competence hierarchy.
Yeah, I tell you what's funny is like there was one of these shows where Chris was on here, he was talking about like, oh, I don't know if I want to have Rollo on here. He sounds like he's gleeful, and it sounds like it's truthful anger. That same bullshit line as I always hear, right? I keep getting that same one over and over again. But yet he quotes the same. I mean, he basically paraphrased right there exactly everything I've ever said. I've said this before. Women turn themselves into the men that they want to be or that they want to get with, right? Jordan says it. Rob Henderson says it. David Buss says it. Anyway, Raul Tomasi says it. No, not that. Fuck that guy. Whatever.
It's hierarchy. Sorry.
Okay.
Who's going to tell women the equal access to opportunity that you have recently just acquired? Actually, what that's doing is it's making it more difficult for you to find a mate that you're fundamentally attracted to.
Yeah. Well,
Now, before he answers this, does that at all sound like what I've said in the past, where I'm like, for a woman, like when women come to me and they say, well, how do I get a guy, Rollo? I've done everything by the book. I did everything that I was told to do to be a high-powered alpha female. I got the degree. I made partner in the law firm. I got, make lots of money. I got, all my education's on par, and I can't find that guy. Remember when I did the Steve Harvey episode? And the lady's there. It's like, I'm 36 years old and I got my own business. And here's my mom and she really wants grandchildren and blah, blah, blah. And I really am waiting and praying that God will just put that man right on my doorstep and we can just go off into, perpetuity together. Right. And I've had that conversation with lots and lots of women. And they say, well, what do I do, Rollo? How do I do? I said, well, you have to feminize yourself. Well, how do I do that? Well, get in touch with your feminine side. And you've got to, present yourself as being female rather than being male or masculine, right? And so for me to say, fem it up, right? That sounds like dumb yourself down. And that's exactly what Rob is saying, or asking me, Chris is saying right here. Exactly, to the letter. And he's about to answer this right here. And this is interesting.
It does a lot of things. I mean, it does provide women with a lot more opportunity on the economic front. It does decrease their dependency on their mate in relationship to economic security. And educating women, countries that are willing to educate women, that's the best predictor of their future economic success.
False. That is the best predictor of a declining fertility rate, Jordan. People will say, well, their GDP goes up if you put women into the workplace. Yeah, initially, when you first do that, when you say, you know what, ladies, we're removing we're removing the glass ceiling. Yeah, initially it does. But that GDP is not sustainable because the fertility rate over the course of 4 or 5 decades plummets to below replacement levels. That is the real fallout of exactly what he's talking about here.
So if you look at developing countries and you want to find out what about a developing country is most likely to predict the fact that they will continue to thrive economically, it's their attitude towards the education of women. And a couple more things. Women's educational status predicts their children's educational status, but men's educational status doesn't. So that's also an important multi-generational effect. I released a video. I was going to conclude that other story. I released a video, or someone released a clip of me talking about some of the things we just talked about. And it went out on YouTube Shorts, and it's got like 5 million views in a month or something like that. And the comment section is unbelievably vitriolic. Every single comment is vitriolic, and it's all from women. It's like, who is this old white bastard telling us what we should do with our bodies? And I wasn't being judgmental. I was just saying exactly what I said to you, which is...
Actually, you were being judgmental, and it's okay. Call it judgmental. Do so. Embrace the judginess. Seriously, we need more judgmentalism. We need people to call women to the carpet, hold people's feet to the fire, rub their noses in it, Jordan. Call it what it is and embrace it and love it and live in it. It is judgmentalism, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I've watched women over the entire course of my life with, I would say, an affectionate eye. I love my sister. I love my wife. I have a daughter. I love my mother. I'm pretty happy about women, all things considered. I don't have an axe to grind in relationship to how they should conduct their lives. I don't even know how they should conduct their lives. I've watched what happens.
I do.
And I've also watched what happens to women who hit 29 or 30 and then can't conceive. And that is not fate I would wish on anyone. It's awful. And 30% of couples fall into that. 30% of couples have difficulty conceiving. It's a lot. And the probability that you'll have difficulty conceiving increases with age.
Right.
And so, c'est la vie.
Judgy.
But
wow. Chris Williamson, does that sound gleeful? Because I've said exactly the same thing. Oh, I don't like your delivery.
It's very interesting to me to see how vitriolic those comments have been and how uniform that is, because usually on my YouTube channel in particular, 95% of the comments are positive. And this is completely the opposite of that. So you brought this up at the beginning. You said 50% of women now at 30.
50.1 are childless by 30.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, well, there's a stat you don't include when you're talking about putting women into the workforce and GDP and all that great and all the good news about the GDP is going to go up if we put more women in the workforce. And yet we have now a countervailing data point that Chris just laid on us here, right? 30 past 30, they don't have kids.
That's not good. That's a sign of something profoundly wrong with the entire culture at an extremely deep level.
Not the culture. It's empowerment. It's fempowerment that we've been doing for almost 60 years now.
I don't think that women need to take it as us trying to tell women what they should or shouldn't do, but I think that it would be very fair to say that you need to be an incredibly unique woman to make it to 50 without a family.
Unique. How nice of you. That didn't sound gleeful. That sounded just like I would expect a proper Australian to say it, right?